Welcome to the Five Stack, ladies and gentlemen, where we count down the five biggest stories of the day. Thank you all for joining me. We'll give it a couple minutes to let joining us, not me. Very selfish. It was very Trumpian of me. Thanks for joining me. I'm the center of attention. Me.
I'm happy to be here with you too. So
Well, I'm happy to be here with you. You're
There you go.
you're the guy that runs the show here. I just kind of pop my mouth off and then
is that right?
run away.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what we do.
You like to put it that way? Okay, no problem. I'll buy that.
I pop off and bug off. But no, thank you for coming, guys. We really appreciate it. We've got kind of an interesting show for everybody today on the back of the weekend roundup with my friend Lev Parnas, which, by the way, was excellent. Everybody should go check it out. It'll be up on Substack. I think it's there now, but it's in our notes and up on Substack later on this afternoon. But we're going to be talking about the financial portion of Epstein, JP Morgan, and all the billions of dollars that they funneled to back and forth and why and how. And some news that just came out about that. We've got some troubling news coming out of the Caribbean when it comes to the drumbeats of war, Venezuela. Yes, you're next. In the distraction theater, in the theater of fucking Trump's absurd. Chicago, speaking of which, mass protests this weekend was a beautiful thing. We'll talk about an interesting decision the Supreme Court just made today. There's a post up about it at deanblundell.substack.com that will feed into the Chicago story as well. It's truly a fucking dark day, maybe the darkest day for America's judiciary. And of course, Trump fabricating bullshit on Canada and a study in contrast between two leaders that I cannot fucking wait to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my friend Zev Shalev. Where are we starting? Hi, Arlene. Hi, Kat. Hi, Julie. Hi, LAC. Hi, everybody. Hi, Greensboro, North Carolina. Hi, no matter where you're from, we're here for you from Canada with love. Let's get going, Zev. Where do we go?
We begin at number 5. A bombshell New York Times investigation reveals that JP Morgan Chase spent over a decade supporting Jeffrey Epstein, processing more than $1 billion in transactions, while executives repeatedly overrode internal warnings about his suspicious cash withdrawals and sex trafficking red flags. The bank continued serving Epstein even after his 2008 conviction, with top executive Jess Staley defending him and Jamie Dimon claiming under oath that he knew nothing about Epstein until 2019. Jess, of course, is a very close friend of Epstein and was at the mansion many, many times, which is why he's under such scrutiny for his actions. JP Morgan ultimately paid him $24 million, or rather paid, while opening accounts for his victims and wiring funds to Eastern Europe, where young women were being recruited into his network. So this is not the first time we've looked into JP Morgan's finances, but the news is that David Enrich and the team at the New York Times has done a phenomenal job of looking into the history of Epstein with JP Morgan, and it's a fascinating read.
Finally getting to the money portion, and this is what everybody's protecting, right? When you say it was out, I got a couple questions for you, being the investigative reporting guru that you are. You've been on this story for a very long time. This is all you've been talking about is the money trail. Who's at fault? JP Morgan, Chase, they both settled, hundreds of millions of dollars with the Epstein victims. And now you're seeing why effectively. But I guess a couple of questions. Hello, Brenda from Northeast Ohio. Thanks for joining us. Couple questions for you. Are you saying that there is a financial trail? There is a money trail that the New York Times has uncovered where they can prove that between Epstein and JP Morgan Chase, they knowingly sent money to Epstein's victims, knowing exactly what it was for?
Yeah, this has been known for a while. They've actually had to pay a lot of money because of this knowledge that they released their data to the Attorney General of New York, I think, at the time, and as it turns out, there's a lot of criming going on, and so they had to pay a big restitution for that. They also had to pay restitution for the disappearance of a lot of data. Prior to the formation of JP Morgan Chase, which happened in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, there was the Chemical Bank and the Chase Bank, which became a merged item, and then JP Morgan joined that. The early part of Epstein's financial history, along with Donald Trump's, by the way, financial history, has all disappeared because we just don't know, what their transactions were like. So even though we have a good understanding of what happened after 2000, the period of time before 2000 is missing Sorry, it might be a little earlier than that, the exact time. I might not give you the exact dates, but there's an early portion that he's missing, and we will never find out what's going on there. So that makes me all very suspicious as a journalist. You expect banks to keep records. You expect banks to keep records for long periods of time. Just because they merge doesn't mean they should lose those records. And yet here they are saying, they had to pay $4 million because of some of the lost records.
I had to go and get some banking information from years ago for Canada's the incredible people at the Canadian Revenue Agency a while ago, if you remember these. And they're like, we want 10 years. I'm like, okay. So I go to the bank and it's like, we only go back 6, 7. Like
Yeah.
we have nothing after 7. That's Canada. I don't know if the United, or maybe it's just my bank and their policy. I haven't looked into it, but I'm just giving you my example. I don't know if there's a similar example. Maybe it is 20 years, maybe it is 25 years, and I'm not playing devil's advocate because I'm trying to stick up for Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and JP Morgan Chase and $1 billion in sex trafficking, pedophile ring money. That's not what I'm trying to do. But is that not part of this?
It's part of it is that they merge, and when there's mergers, they just put away all the records and they file them away into the archives. That's probably a legitimate reason for why these things have gone, but these clients were not just everyday clients. I mean, Epstein was probably the most important client JP Morgan had. In terms of fees, he generated up to $8 million a year just on fees. So he was very important to JP Morgan. He was obviously close with Jess Staley, whose office was just doors away from Jamie Dimon. And Jamie Dimon to this day claims that he didn't know anything about this Jeffrey Epstein case until 2019. It's just not really plausible. There's one email which talks about Jamie Dimon coming to see Jeffrey Epstein at the mansion, and that Jess Staley was organizing that. Or maybe that didn't happen, but there was certainly lots of conversations that would have involved Jeffrey Epstein. He was such an important client. And for Jamie Dimon to say, all the way to 2019, he hadn't even heard of Epstein, either means he's, not very good at his job, or his team was really keeping him away from the story.
Yeah, or he is lying.
Or he's lying.
Or
there is that possibility that he's lying.
Yeah, I always go with that one with money guys. Hey, listen, there's no guarantee that Jamie Dimon isn't involved somehow. There's no guarantee because they quickly anteed up. I want to say it was about 200 to 250 million that they paid the Epstein survivors, right?
Yeah.
And they did that like, hey, let's just forget about a trial. Yeah, we get it. Let's just give them as much money as we possibly can. That's a lot of fucking money. And they deserve every penny, if not more. But to your point, that settlement makes this story make a whole bunch of sense, is how quickly can we get this off our plate and get back to the business of doing business? How quickly can we just satisfy those people, throw a bunch of money at them? $250 million in a settlement that wasn't adjudicated is a pretty incredible settlement, number one. Number two, what I find fascinating is that the reporters of the New York Times, and I haven't read the story, I'm just kind of downloading it from what you've just talked about. Believe it or not, I don't know all the things that we're going to talk about coming into this 5-stack sometimes. Zev will come with a couple.
I'll try to catch him every day.
Yeah. It's a good one. But as we're talking, there's so many questions in my head. Like, how long did this go on for? Who else was involved? How many people knew explicitly what this was for that continued to co-sign and perpetrate horrific sex assaults on children for decades?
These guys kept paying his bank after 2008, when it was very apparent what he did because he was, convicted then. But they didn't seem to care. I mean, it took a long time for people at the bank. There was a basic revolt inside the bank for them to stop serving him. And Staley was a part. I'm just looking at the article here just to see if I can get you an exact date. But Staley was part of the JP Morgan empire for a long time, and really was considered a number two at the bank. And he was very close friends, I think, from the early 90s, from the mid 90s. With Ghislaine Maxwell confirming that in her interview the other day with Todd Blanche.
So he's in the Epstein files.
He's not only in there, I think he's closely associated with. I mean, I think he's there as a regular visitor to the mansion. So, the 1990s, think about how long ago these guys were just watching this happen, probably being eyewitnesses to events and ignoring it. And certainly
maybe even being involved.
Yeah, and they, maybe they saw that it was criminality, but didn't feel like it was any legal threat to them, so they kept doing it. I mean, that certainly seems to be the sense you get from
Yeah.
reading this. Well, he might be criming, but it's not going to hurt us, so let him keep going. There were a lot. The tension here really needs to turn to FinCEN. FinCEN is where all the documents are. Whenever there's a suspicious banking activity, you file a report with FinCEN, and FinCEN would know how many times people would have applied for suspicious reports or suspicious transactions by Epstein over the years, and how many times people didn't follow through on that. And it's interesting that is being held back right now. Treasury Secretary Bissett is in charge of that, and he's refusing to release those documents.
Of course.
Which I mean, why? Why is the president and why is his Treasury Secretary
they're all
hiding?
guilty.
They're all just guilty. Guilty.
You can wax about it.
Yeah.
You can go, well, what's the nuance? Who's attached? God, like a Venn diagram, and they're all fucking guilty. Scott Bessent, there's a report out about Scott Bessent. You know how he punched Elon Musk in the face and gave him a black eye?
Yes.
There's a report that he went after and tried to punch Bill Pulte in the face. Well, I mean, Scott Bessent has a very interesting history as well. And let's not forget that it's not just women, young girls that were caught up in this trafficking ring as victims as well. So, I'm pointing a finger at Scott Bessent for refusing to release the FinCEN information, where you can literally track, I believe, the amount. Senator Ron Wyden, who's been awesome, he's like, there's 4,725 fucking transactions there, and we need to see all of them. We need to see what they're about, the subjects, the topics, the amounts, the who's, the what's, the where's, the when's, the why's. And Scott Bessent's the gatekeeper for that.
There were a lot of complaints all the time, all the way through the time as Epstein was a client for any of these banks. They all put suspicious reports through, but these were always quashed, including at Deutsche Bank after 2013 and before at JP Morgan. So you've got is the banking industry a party to this? Yes, they certainly are parties to this. They are facilitating this human trafficking. They're facilitating this drug trafficking. They're facilitating a lot of the.
A $250 million settlement to victims doesn't necessarily say you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, no, it says we misstepped and a lot. So to suggest that they did not. They weren't involved in any ways, of course, nonsense. They were involved. They facilitated this. They knew what was going on.
Sure.
Without these banks, this wouldn't have happened.
What a fucking story. Man, oh man. Those are the threads, that the everyday American needs to pull on. Those are the threads that Americans who want to know whether you're MAGA and you got let down by Trump who's hiding the Epstein files, whether you're just a concerned citizen that doesn't like the idea that Donald Trump is protecting a massive network of fucking filthy, rich, disgusting, fascist pedophiles. Those are the strings that we all need to pull on. And these are the conversations that we need to have. The importance of sharing this content, the New York Times stuff. It's never been more important. And good on the New York Times for coming out with that report, because follow the money. Follow the money. You'll get the who's, the how's, the where's, the when's, and the why's. All the W's that really fucking matter when it comes to trying to figure out how America gets America back. And it starts with accountability. It starts with financial accountability, not rules for me and not for thee. It's the other way around. And that is the entire problem with the United States of America. It has never been more clear to me how corrupt the United States of America is at the top of every level, and how the rest of us are victims, marks, trafficked, abused, beaten, taxed. I mean, Jamie Dimon, if he knew about this, and the people that he worked with at JP Morgan, definitely knew about it, because they paid off a bunch of victims saying, hey, our bad, shouldn't have done that. They should be in jail with Ghislaine Maxwell as well. And she's the only person in jail, and she's not even really in fucking jail right now. The entire thing stinks. And if we start pulling on these threads that really smell, all of us, including mainstream media, which is why I give New York Times a little bit of credit, we'll get those answers. We'll get those answers whether or not SCOTUS decides to side with Trump and not allow these files to be released.
Let's not forget what he was doing. What he and Ghislaine Maxwell were doing was running a blackmail operation. that would have targeted a lot of these same individuals. I mean, they were throwing these parties with these underage girls and inviting all these business leaders in to collect blackmail information so they can get them to do what they wanted them to do at a later stage. So, the suggestion here that the corruption is so intense and so massive, you've never seen anything like it, is true. Because this is every major titan in business in America that was, wandered through there. Certainly many of them, most of them, and each of them was beholden to Epstein and Ghislaine
Yeah.
Maxwell because of the blackmail material. So, this is it's a huge scandal, obviously, and it does absolutely incorporate all these business leaders. And it's interesting, the oversight committee has gotten now the birthday book with a drawing that, you remember the Trump drawing of the female figure that the Wall Street Journal reported on. Well, now the state has handed that over to the oversight committee, along with many, many other financial statements and also flight logs. And the flight logs are going to be very interesting because I want to see if they comport with the ones that have been previously revealed to all of us.
Be interesting to see if they actually get the unvarnished estate documents, right?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see, because as it sits now, every time I hear about a document done for someone getting some evidence, I'm like, guaranteed it's corrupted. Guaranteed.
Yeah. This stuff is different because this stuff is coming from the state, which is also good. It's got many questions around the state, but still, it's different than the stuff coming out of the DOJ. It hasn't had Donald Trump's people go through it, we don't think, and look over it and redact any names. So we might learn a lot more from the state documents than we do from the DOJ documents.
I hope so.
Story number 4. This is breaking news. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made an unannounced visit to Puerto Rico Monday as the Pentagon assembles an armada of at least 8 warships in the Caribbean and considers deploying fighter jets to the island territory. The Trump administration is dramatically upping its operations against Latin American drug cartels following last week's deadly strike on a vessel that killed 11 alleged narco-terrorists, well, that's what they're calling them, though no evidence has been provided verifying who was actually on board. Democrats are questioning the legality of using deadly military force for what has traditionally been a Coast Guard law enforcement mission. And the Pentagon has abruptly canceled a congressional briefing on this to answer the basic questions there. But the big news there is Hegseth's in Puerto Rico because he wants to launch operations from Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
I mean,
he also wants, but he also wants people to think he's super fucking cool all the time, and this is a TV operation for him. This is a chance to present himself, and I don't know if you saw him in the White House talking about maximum lethality versus tepid legality. Like, he did this big fucking stupid poem, and he was reading it off a poster on the floor of the Oval Office. He looked like an idiot. But to your point, doesn't matter if Hegseth's there, because there are over 4,500 troops currently either en route or in Puerto Rico. There are another 7 to 8 warships that are amassing. There are 10 F-35s, 10 F-35s that are currently parked at an Air Force base in Puerto Rico, where they plan on launching some type of action. Listen, I don't put anything past this administration when it comes to distractions.
Yeah.
Invading Venezuela is a distraction from said Epstein files. It is an operation to give him the wide berth that he's looking for to announce national security emergency in 2026. It is giving him the wide berth that he's looking for when it comes to showing a little American ankle and getting people to think, yay, fuck yeah, America's going to war. I remember in 1992, I don't know if you remember this, 1992, a little thing called the Gulf War broke out. And the Gulf War, I remember sitting, I'm 18 years old, 19 years old. And I remember it was right after basketball practice because I was still in high school at the time. And our basketball teacher comes up to us and he's like, gentlemen, we are officially at war. He said, we. I was going to school in Canada at the time. And all 19 of us hardy young men are like, yeah, war. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. It was like first war I've ever seen. I'm only 19 years old. And it was that first made for TV war where you saw the correspondence going. I was glued to it. I was laughing at Baghdad bomb. In the background, bombs are dropping. He's like, oh, we got them right where we want them. I'm like, this is incredible. And it was then where I realized how war is exciting. War activates certain groups of people. War or rumors of war get the blood flowing in a state that is predicated on war, that has built their identity on war, or the fact that they are the ultimate deterrence, and whatever war they get involved in, they will annihilate people and they have the equipment to do it. That matters more because there is no reason to invade Venezuela. We have none. We have
No,
zero. The United States has no reason to invade Venezuela. They have
no.
no
Or
reason
Mexico.
to blow a fucking boat out of the water with 11 Venezuelan citizens at it. It is all one thing that leads to another thing that leads to another thing, and none of it is war worthy, and none of it is authentic. It is all meant to distract you from what he wants to do so that he can give himself multiple opportunities to make sure he keeps power in 2026, and to continue to distract you, juice you up, get you thinking about other things. Because if America's a war, America's a war. Yay, war. Including, and most importantly, what we just talked about, which is the unraveling of the cover up around the Epstein files.
Yeah, because it's a tale as old as time. Dictators going to war to distract the population, to distract everyone. It happens over and over again. But in Russia, where Vladimir Putin does this all the time, this is how he's created this war economy that they have there. They just, anytime he needs a distraction, he'll launch some sort of war, some sort of operation. It makes the leader look stronger, especially if they're able to control both sides of that operation. And the thing that I find so interesting about Vladimir Putin's wars is he always likes to control both sides. He sort of knows who he has some strings on the enemy that he's supposedly fighting against. He can always figure out the outcome and control the outcome. And I think this might be the same kind of thing because, of course, the Maduro government is not disconnected from Vladimir Putin. They're very connected to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, they have Russian soldiers, Russian engineers, Russian oil guys, Russian
Chinese
tankers.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they're also connected to Donald Trump makes them, kind of an entertaining twosome to be fighting against each other. For Vladimir Putin to set up a little war makes Trump look better, maybe solidifies some bravado or some sort of hero worship of the regime at a time when they need it. And suddenly you got an ascendant Donald Trump who's currently having a lot of crises at home, who's not doing well on any front. No. And suddenly you're putting in a war, and boy, he'll start looking good to people.
Makes you wonder a little bit too if Putin's pulling the strings on this, because he gave up Iran. He's like, yeah, go ahead, fucking bomb them. And then he told Iran to move all the warheads. Don't worry about it. We'll just rebuild.
He kind of gave them up.
He kind of did. And then the same thing with Maduro, right? I don't know if I'm pretty sure Venezuela's a BRICS nation, or maybe they're considering it. I'm not too sure, but heavy support via Putin, specifically when Biden was in office, and they were like, hey, Maduro, you lost the election, get the fuck out. You saw Russian military planes land in Venezuela. So part of this makes me wonder if it's like, okay, yeah, you go ahead and bomb Venezuela, take them out, make it look like you and I are scrapping, and you're going to be the hero of America, when meanwhile, we'll just get you down there and we'll continue to plunder that South American state. What do you say, Donald? Like that is a very plausible explanation here.
It's very, very plausible, and it's also about the oil, right? And every time there's oil, it's all about Russia. And Donald Trump would like nothing better than a big war like that as a distraction. So absolutely, I think this deployment to Puerto Rico, the militarization of the southern border, the vessels that they're moving in around that whole region, all has to do with making them look good in some sort of war, either against Mexico or Venezuela. Venezuela seems more likely because it is connected to Putin.
And don't sleep on a little something that happened with Pam Bondi the other day, where she had a press conference and she lied, full-on, bold-faced lie about Canada being a hub of human trafficking into the United States, and how she was going to task Border Patrol and law enforcement to effectively militarize the Canadian and American border. That is also an operation. That is also a lie. That is also a prerequisite for some type of military or some type of action on behalf of the United States government. They're opening up as many fronts for excuses as humanly possible at this point. Venezuela, Mexico, militarizing the border, calling it a fucking army base. Same thing with Canada. They just started laying the tracks. Fentanyl didn't work. Now we're on to fucking human smuggling, which is a total fucking lie. And don't take your eyes off of why. Because the more he has going on, the more wars this guy is engaged in, the more skirmishes, the more fake tough guy fucking videos he puts out of blowing up a boat with 11 Venezuelan citizens in it, which, by the way, is widely used as a fishing boat. No fucking proof at all. They were narco terrorists
I'm
to
not
the
even sure
point
they're
where
Venezuelans, to be honest.
JD, I don't think they were. JD Vance is like, I don't give a shit what happened. I'm glad they're dead. I mean, it's a war crime. They're committing war crimes and then possibly going to war to cover up the war crimes. And they're all pillars to turning America into a fascist dictatorial fucking state.
Absolutely. It's a very disturbing development what's happening in Puerto Rico. And in the vilification of the Canadians in terms of human trafficking. I mean, they'll throw anything at Canada in order to fulfill their mission. And we'll talk more a little bit later on about how they really are coming after Alberta and coming after Canada in a very, very serious way. That's later on in the show. Meanwhile, speaking of war, tens of thousands of Chicagoans flooded the streets this weekend after Trump posted an Apocalypse Now style meme declaring the city would find out why it's called the Department of War, capital WAR, ahead of planned mass deportation raids. So Governor Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson drew hard legal lines, with CPD reiterating it will not assist ICE in civil immigration enforcement, while the city is in cities activated rapid response networks, open sanctuary spaces, and set up legal hotlines. So they've taken some really big initiatives in Illinois and Chicago, but this thing is still on. I mean, they're calling it Operation Midway Belt or something like that, and it is happening right now.
Yeah, they're staging at the Great Lakes Naval Air Force Base, just in Chicago, just outside of Chicago, as a matter of fact. And there is not a goddamn thing JB Pritzker can do other than warn people, other than prepare CPD to, be present for these things, not assist these people, and prevent any human rights indignities to Chicagoans and the people of Illinois. And it's not just happening in Chicago. I just wanted to point that out. It happened in Texas. I don't know. There's a couple videos rolling around of ICE literally scooping everybody up from job sites that are building new homes, where now the new home builds have completely stopped. I don't know if you saw the the Hyundai plant raid.
Oh, gosh.
Where
Crazy.
you had 475 South Koreans legally in the United States of America to teach Americans how to build and run this EV battery plant, of which South America dumped, and Hyundai, a few $billion into the Atlanta, Georgia area so they could build this. It was a deal that Trump ballyhooed. He talked about South Korea giving us a bunch of money. We're going to mid trillions, 80 gazillion, quadrillion dollars from fucking South America. And he goes and bones 475 legal temporary foreign workers. It is amazing.
Unbelievable.
And so like we're focusing on Chicago, friends, but it is happening everywhere. And we'll get to something that the Supreme Court said today, which makes this even fucking worse. Let's do it right now.
The number 2 story, the Supreme Court just lifted all restrictions on immigration raids in LA, overturning a federal judge's findings that ICE agents were illegally targeting people based on race, language, and occupation. Justice Brett Kavanaugh explicitly wrote that apparent ethnicity, that's interesting language, can be a relevant factor for immigration stops when combined. Apparent ethnicity. Racism / racism. Because, this is. Go ahead.
No, let's just stop there for a second and we'll get to the rest of the Kavanaugh bullshit. He ruled that apparent ethnicity.
Yeah.
Not a specific ethnicity, apparent, which is not white.
Yes.
Anybody not white can be detained, beaten, arrested for an indefinite period of time and be held as a fucking criminal because of their apparent ethnicity. Let's fucking put that in layman terms, the color of their skin.
Yes, because that apparent
racist, fucking racist.
He says that the apparent ethnicity can be a relevant factor for immigration stops when combined with other factors like job type or location. So so much. These terms are incredible. Job type or location. In other words, if you're outside a Home Depot looking for work for that day, well, that means it's a relevant factor for why they can deport you. Justice Sonia Sotomayor's blistering dissent warned, we should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work at a low-wage job. The raids have sparked massive protests and clashes with police, as you know. and so many people have the National Guard troops, of course, deployed in Southern California. But her dissent was really powerful. I don't have the full dissent, unfortunately, in front of me. But she goes on to say, this can't be taken for very much longer. We have to express our dissent around this.
Yeah, Kagan, Brown, and Sotomayor all dissented, and they all said the same thing. And there's a little nugget in their dissensions that all rang true, and I really latched onto it. That decision that Kavanaugh delivered on behalf of 6 hardline, conservative, criminal, corrupt fucking judges. 6 decided that 6 of them. You can be arrested for loitering in front of a Home fucking Depot, arrested, detained, beaten, deported, arrested, all that, for standing in front of Home Depot if they don't like the color of your skin. That's effectively what happened today with the Supreme Court. It is the fucking death of the Fourth Amendment, number 1. It is racist, number 2. It is, you could consider it genocidal light, number 3.
Genocidal, yeah. Moving people out of their homes, moving people out of their place of where they reside to other...
Due to the fucking color of their skin.
This is apartheid South Africa. This is, when they were giving people pass books in South Africa and telling them they had to move back to different old tribal territories and telling them they couldn't leave those territories or travel into the white cities without pass books. That's what this is all about. This is basically the same kind of legislation. And they had all these terms in South Africa too, all these justifications, how they would figure out what one race was and what another race was. And, people used to have, if they could stick a pencil in your head, if this pencil stayed there, it meant you were black. If it didn't, it meant you were white or another ethnicity. I mean, it's that kind of stupidity that drove the apartheid government, but it's the same kind of stupidity that is driving these laws. I mean, how can the Supreme Court, in any good faith, stand up and say they're upholding the Constitution of the United States when they are basically allowing racial profiling? They're basically allowing people to be arrested because of the color of their skin. That is not equality. That is not what the Constitution of the United States talks about, and it's not what we should have in America. It's not what we've stood for all along. And this Supreme Court is just unbelievably brazen in its racism.
Yeah. Well, it's because they're corrupt.
Yeah.
Justice Breyer, that was the second time, the LA decision that they just overturned, that was the second time that he basically dressed down Donald Trump and said, you cannot use military against its own people. Posse comitatus is an act that has been around for since 1878. And so that's the other thing. The Posse Comitatus Act, throw that fucking out of the window.
Because the Supreme Court, they don't like. They don't like the law. They'll just ignore it. We'll just do whatever we want.
Yeah. And here's the catch. We talked about it earlier. What does the Trump regime have on, and what did Epstein have on? Jamie Dimon, the people that worked at JP Morgan, everybody involved, all the different banks that seem to, understand what's going on. I'm going to ask the same question about the Supreme Court. What does Donald Trump have on Clarence Thomas, John Roberts, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Amy Comey Barrett, whoever the fucking sixth guy is, or I couldn't even be bothered to understand it right now. It doesn't matter to me. But what does he have on these people? I know what he's got on Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas' wife is a complete fucking cuckoo hillbilly insurrectionist. Clarence Thomas also took all kinds of money from Leonard Leo and made decisions for the Supreme Court on the behalf of some of his donors or friends. So I know what they have on him, but what do they have on fucking John Roberts?
Well, they must have something. I mean, remember when he took out Justice Kennedy? Remember there was that one moment when he put his arms around him. It was on national TV, and we all watched it. And Donald Trump told Kennedy something, and I think it was related to the fact that Kennedy's son worked at Deutsche Bank as one of associated with either the Donald Trump or Epstein accounts. I can't remember which, but I think the Donald Trump accounts. And I'm not sure what happened there, but he was basically taken out by the first Trump administration, and almost on national TV, if I remember that exact moment. So, this is they have this court corrupted. Of course they do. All those billionaire meetups, those lodge meetings, those hunting trips, or all these billionaire
free
flights.
RVs.
Yeah, free education for your kids or your, anyone really. If you want to throw it, we'll give them free education. We'll give them free housing. We'll ignore all these things that you've done in the past. But of course, some of those people, if I remember, were also Nazi war memorabilia collectors who were supporting them.
Yeah,
so it's
Leonard
not hard
Leo.
to see the thread of where you get from, a Nazi war memorial memorabilia collector
Yeah.
to a racist decision like this from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, listen, there's no other alternative other than the Supreme Court is corrupt as fuck. If Americans thought that the Supreme Court was here to save America when this whole mess started 7,
Yeah.
8 months ago,
Mm.
they're slowly waking up to the idea that they are very, very fucking much on their own.
Yeah.
That decision today, canceling the Fifth Amendment, throwing the Posse Comitatus Act out, greenlighting Trump's insane desire to go and arrest people because of their skin color. Any suspicious activity, no, doesn't matter. The skin color.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court with one black man on it, right? A conservative black man,
Mm.
just basically ruined America with one fucking decision. This is the darkest day in the history of the American judiciary. And I challenge anybody else to tell me otherwise.
I think it's very accurate and astute. I mean, I think you've got, the people being deported for looking for work in America. People who are standing outside of Home Depot looking for work, but because of the color of their skin, they can get deported out of the country and sent into concentration camps, into gulags.
Don't go right to deportation, dude.
Yeah.
They can get detained, beaten, harassed, raped, removed from their cities, sent willy-nilly to fucking Uganda if they want. There's a couple horrific steps before deportation, which is to a completely different country that they're not from. Like they're sending people to fucking Uganda, Venezuela, Ecuador's now throwing their hat in the ring saying, yeah, send us your Americans. Because listen, this order doesn't just apply. This does not apply to migrants. This applies to America.
Everybody. Of course, this is an American Supreme Court that's ruling that it's discrimination is okay based on the color of your skin. If you thought that was okay in America, well, I don't know. I mean, I've been living in a different world because America's meant to be the place where that doesn't happen. And here is the Supreme Court greenlighting a complete racism and not just making it illegal to be a certain color, making it un-American to be a certain color, making it illegal to look for work, making it illegal to stand outside of Home Depot. Yep. I mean, it's beyond reproach. It's just America falling apart in real time, and it's happening in broad daylight.
Yeah, it's gross. It's gross in America. I never thought I'd see it. I feel awful for Americans. I don't feel awful for the Americans that voted for Donald Trump that are all going to get sent to CCOT. I don't feel bad for them. You probably do because you're way nicer than me. But I just, this is one of those red lines that gets obliterated without any explanation, any legal recourse, any legal explanation whatsoever, other than racism. And that's not a legal explanation. That's just fucking truth.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, this is white nationalism. This is white apartheid South Africa coming to the United States. The number one story on the countdown today, the Trump administration is manufacturing a fake trafficking and fentanyl crisis to paint Canada as a security threat, ramping up rhetoric about our northern border being a human trafficking hub, despite Canada's top-tier anti-trafficking standards and the fact that most fentanyl enters through the southern ports of entry, not through Canada. The timing is no coincidence. You've been following the story. You're doing an excellent job on Blundell.substack.com about the story, which is really feels like a false flag operation to disrupt Canada, to break up Canada.
Or the start of one.
Yeah.
It was wild. It's sort of the under the radar story that happened last week, September 6th. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, fuck, she's so crazy stupid, it's nuts. Said on that Thursday that human smuggling across the border with Canada is getting worse coming into the United States, and that traffickers are looking north following the Trump administration's crackdown at the border with Mexico. Now they're saying, oh, they're trying to get into America through Canada. Let's just map that out. That would mean that you would have to swim all the way up to Canada and then find a cartel, which Canada doesn't really have at all, to traffic you or smuggle you into the United States.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to get on a boat, or you'd have to get on a plane. Now, let me just insert some fucking common sense and facts here. Human trafficking and exploitation is awful. I get that, and it totally happens in Canada, in the United States, and around the world. The northern flow is a tiny fraction. That's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
The northern flow. I started fucking dying laughing. Oh, it's the northern flow of humans. And not only is it a minuscule, it pales in comparison to the amount of smuggling of fentanyl and human trafficking from the United States into Canada by a factor of fucking 10.
Yeah. The drugs come the other way. They don't really
10.
come that way. So
Here's
this
the
is
catch.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Here's the catch.
Yeah.
Pam Bondi, when she made that announcement, said that she had spoken to Canadian officials, which she did, launched this complaint, and told Canadian officials that the United States, was going to take active measures to increase security and military personnel at the Canadian border with the United States of America. If you listen back to a conversation we had earlier in this podcast about an exclusionary zone at the southern border of the United States that has been militarized, where there are now tens of thousands of active service personnel, equipment, getting ready to stage a cartel invasion because it is giving America national security fits. That announcement from Bondi, that excuse from Bondi, which is pure bullshit.
I'll be right back. Sorry, keep going.
No problem. That excuse is the exact same intention that Donald Trump and the Trump regime have for Canada. It is the exact same operation. It's just a different set of excuses. It's a different lie. It's a different, excuse to somehow get national security. And the reason for national security, put it at the feet of the American people so they can say, hey, we didn't have a choice. What does that mean? I don't know. Other than the fact that things are moving very quickly when it comes to not just the militarization of the border between the United States and America, but the lies that are being told, all the lies that are being told by Americans, ginning up everybody in that country so that they can have fucking news stories like the one that I just read and posted and completely obliterated at deanblundell.com. You can go and read about it because they want to invade Canada. There is no other explanation. The fentanyl shit didn't work, so now they're inventing human trafficking. And it's always the same fucking precursor to the same fucking solution, which is we need to militarize the border.
And what's going on with Danielle Smith and this, the secession of Alberta, this whole propaganda war that's starting to chip away at Canadians in terms of their belief in the sovereignty of Alberta and being part of Canada is very disturbing. I mean, this is a propaganda operation that looks like the kind of stuff that Putin ran against Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's very similar.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly the same. The same thing that we talked to Jacob Karsbo, who was a Danish intelligence officer, if you remember last week. He started last week where we had him on and we asked about them catching, Americans committing espionage in Greenland, trying to change the tide, trying to, gin up Greenlanders that they're unhappy and you should secede from Denmark. And they called in the American diplomat in Denmark, or the ambassador of Denmark, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, nothing." Just business. We're just doing nothing. That is happening right now in Alberta with the launch of a $500 million transition fund for Alberta separatists to remove Alberta from the Federation. And Danielle Smith, and I've got a piece just put it up today, where you can read about how she is desperately trying to attach herself to a couple of different groups, like the North American Prosperity Project, the North American Energy Council. These are all MAGA-run, and Trump fronts for big oil and tons of money. And she has spent more time in the United States, including penning an op-ed in the Washington Post this last weekend, believe it or not, about how America will never find a better energy partner than not Canada, Alberta. So these are very and she's a smart lady. Like, she is an absolute fucking Koch group of companies operative. She worked at the Fraser Institute. She wrote a fucking op-ed about 20 years ago because she was working as a lobbyist for Big Tobacco about how secondhand smoke wasn't actually that bad for you. It was not bad to have a couple smokes a day. Like, I'm not kidding you. She's really, 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 really good at this stuff.
Yeah.
So heads up, because she might be the best communicator. She's also absolutely in Donald Trump's pocket.
And it's a propaganda war. I mean, this is what asymmetric warfare looks like. It starts off by people, a foreign nation launching a propaganda attack at a country. They weaken the resolve of certain people. They try to, weaken the resolve people on the edges, people who might be opposed to the government that's in power in that country. And they start feeding them a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies, but a lot of compelling, at least it seems on the outside, reasons to be dismissive of their government, to be against their government. And this is what it looks like. It's beamed in basically from across the border, and it gets to people. It does get to people. And with social media today, it's very easy to get to each individual, which, by the way, they've already profiled. They know what your fears are. They know what your interests are, what your kids are doing, everything they need to know about you in order to target just the right fear. And when they approach you with whatever their pitch is. So this is not just, one politician in Alberta standing up and doing whatever she's doing. This is asymmetric warfare. This is America learning from the Russians about how to take over a country by using propaganda, by using disinformation, by using asymmetric warfare. And people really have to understand that it's very serious. We've seen it happen in Ukraine. We've seen it happen in many countries along Russia's border. And now, of course, we see it in the United States. And now they're trying to do it in Canada.
There's a great article in Maclean's magazine, which nobody up here reads anymore. Somehow it still exists. I don't even understand why. And Maclean's is a very old publication. And they had a feature in there that I read today. It was like Confessions of an Ex-Anti-Vaxxer.
Mm-hmm.
This anti-vaxxer lived in the deep woods of Alberta, was a healthcare professional, and spent a lot of time consuming content in and amongst her friend group that was piped in directly from the United States of America, pumped in directly from Russia, pumped in directly to the minds of willing participants in what is going on in Alberta, which is an attempt to separate from Canada. Alberta was the province that had the most representation at the fake Flu Trucks Klan trucker convoy that tried to hang all of our politicians and take over the government a few years ago. You might remember it. It's called the Freedom Convoy. It was not about freedom. It was just about a whole bunch of fucking ginned up hillbillies that spent too much time consuming Facebook memes and American anti-vax, anti-science, anti-government content. They decided to get in their fucking pickup trucks and drive across the country and hold a city and border crossings hostage. They used kids as human shields to prevent them from being arrested. Got pictures, I've got videos. I mean, I was in it. I had 1,400 death threats in the matter of a couple of weeks. Like, literally, that's exactly what they are. That was, and you know who was on the scene for all of it, calling it a beautiful thing? Fox News, Tucker Carlson, the dickheads from Tenet Media,
Rebel Media,
all the fucking same actors. And they highly target the province of Alberta for one specific reason. It is the oil capital of Canada. And I'm going to say something that's going to upset some people. Say a couple of things. It is the religious sect capital of Canada. Hardline evangelical cult members, the ones that make their wives dress in like bonnets and they're not allowed to sit near their husbands when they're in church. There are a ton of those fucking compounds around there. And a lot of those have, extensions from their church that are a little less hardline. And Alberta is one of the least educated provinces in Canada. So they went to work over the past 10 years on Albertans, and it has worked. It has absolutely worked with at least 11 to 19% of that population. And if you read this Confessions of an Anti-Vaxxer, what you do, ex-anti-vaxxer, what you do is you come into the knowledge that, oh my God, foreign powers fried the brains of hundreds of thousands of people in Alberta. Like, fried the brains of those people. And they all have a vote. And Danielle Smith knows that, and she's clinging to power by a thread. So what does she do? She opts out of the One Canada Premiers Agreement. She opts out of this elbows up bullshit, which I think is silly anyway. And she runs right into the arms of the United States. She runs right down to Mar-a-Lago for a photo op. There's no guarantee that she doesn't have a deal to deliver Alberta to the United States of America. But what I can tell you is this, is that province is a hotbed of mega espionage, Russian activity. I talked with a friend of mine that works at the McDonald Laurier Institute. We've talked to him, Marcus Kolga. He knows Russia's there. And I know America's there. So to that point, what does Mark Carney do? I don't know. I mean, I've watched Mark Carney try to bring Alberta into the fore, but he really hasn't been able to do it because I think Danielle Smith, if you're asking me to like, call it right now, I think she has every intention of trying to remove Alberta from the Confederation, which is
I think that's
Canada.
right. And I think that'll, of course, trigger every other province from thinking about the same thing. So I think one of the things that's missing in Canada and in every nation really right now is real understanding of what the asymmetrical warfare landscape looks like and what disinformation looks like when it's hitting. And maybe Marcus is the right person to talk about these things, but you know, we don't have a literacy or an understanding around what it feels like to be under attack in a propaganda way. We still are taking all information as neutral information, or maybe it's right wing, or maybe it's left wing, but we don't understand that it's weaponized information that's really changing the minds of our fellow Canadian citizens to operate as assets of another country, almost of our enemies. So people need to steel themselves. They need to be aware of the information coming at them and learn how to differentiate between what's, complete bullshit that's coming from the Kremlin and what is legitimate information. And because it's a free country, as is the United States, you had such easy flow of information to come into Canada. It's such an easy target for these kinds of people to come in and really, as you say, brainwash the minds of people into thinking that they're one thing or another.
Absolutely. Listen, I shudder to think of a premier of a province in Canada deciding to submit 80 to 85% of the population she swore an oath to protect in the Confederation of Canada. And by the way, secession's not that easy. Canada has to vote on it. It's never going to happen. So it's really just a rugging. But I think in her mind, she would love to submit 80 to 85% of the people of that province to her whims based on 10 to 19 to 20% of the extremists that currently help her occupy the premier's office in Edmonton, Alberta. Which
It may
in
seem like
itself tells you a story. What's that?
It may seem like a rugging, but it could also be a pretext for war, because that's what happens in Ukraine. They find a population, they get sympathetic to them. They now say, well, those are Russian people that we need to protect because of the human rights violations against those people. And before you know it, Russia's invaded these territories and declaring them independent homelands. So, it may not be easy through the constitution to secede, but it may be a good pretext for war down the line.
And it's funny you mentioned that because someone asked me the other day if I thought that Alberta was working with the Trump regime. How did they put it? To create an atmosphere around this whole anti-Christian bias stuff.
Mhm.
You know how JD Vance is on it. Donald Trump's on it. The other day he was talking about how, he came to save Christians. JD Vance talks about anti-Christian bias. All the fucking losers talk about it. Now we've got a conservative politician named Javil Giovanni putting out videos about anti-Christian bias in Canada, burning down churches. Alberta needs to be saved. So, it's funny because I would have said no. I would have said, nah, that's crazy. But I can't count any of that stuff out,
No, you
especially
can't.
when you bring all these little pieces together and you build a picture. And that picture hides behind, hey, it's the same playbook Russia did to Ukraine.
Mhm.
And what Russia did is it said there's a bunch of Russian Christians that are being submitted to like Nazism and fucking Ukraine death cults in Donetsk. We and Crimea. We need to go invade, and they bought it, and they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who
And
knows?
that's where we are today. So I don't know what Canada needs to do to just steel themselves against this, but it's certainly, I think, a real threat that's coming down the pike as one looks at all these geopolitical movements. I was going to talk about something else, if you have a minute, if you don't
Sure.
mind me talking.
Yeah.
This thing comes out every once in a while where people on Twitter talk about me platforming Charles Johnson, who's a well-known, right-wing provocateur, operative, call him what you will. He's involved with a bunch of people who are, just distasteful to say the least, but he clearly is part of this operation that's worked for a long time. So one of my former sources, Greg Smith, who helped me a lot because he worked with Eric Eric Prince for a while, and certainly helped me expose China's role in the Eric Prince operation and in the whole enemies of democracy. The other day was saying that he fell out with me on Twitter because of me platforming Charles Johnson a few years ago. Now, firstly, I don't know. This term platforming is a bit of a crazy term. I interviewed Charles Johnson on my show on Twitter, which is one of those things that I do a lot of the time. I interview lots of people I disagree with, lots of people who come from a different point of view. In this case, he was doing sort of a Lev Parnas thing where he was saying, "I'm now on Biden's side. I'm no longer, I've turned away from Donald Trump, and I'm now on Biden's side." And I was like, "Well, that's interesting. Let's put him on the air." But what it really was the start of a really massive influence operation on me, and I was the target of that influence operation that lasted, um, you know, almost 2 years, believe it or not, maybe a year, and it was a very, they were not happy with my effective reporting on Epstein. They were not happy about my effective reporting on COVID and a bunch of other things. And so they targeted me in the most unbelievable way to hurt my credibility, hurt my reputation, really brought me to bankruptcy at the end of the day, because of their efforts to really suppress what I was doing. And it was a few years of a lot of very difficult times. I mean, to say the full extent of everything they did would be enormous. And so I don't talk about this stuff very much, but I think people need to understand when they hear this criticism around me that I platformed, which really was I interviewed a guy once on my show, and didn't break any journalistic rules that I know of in terms of doing that, that is what you're seeing is the start of an influence campaign that was targeted at a journalist, an independent journalist, and was designed to hurt my credibility, and my reporting over the years. And it's done a very effective job of that.
Is
These
it
guys
still going on?
It still goes on today. I'm this Greg Smith thing writing it today. I'm still seeing him do it today. And I'm like, how come this is still going on?
Who the fuck's this guy? Who the
Greg
fuck
Smith,
is
Greg
this
Smith
guy?
is also questionable where his intelligence backgrounds might be, but he's the former partner of Eric Smith in that company, the
Eric
what's that called?
Prince?
It's Eric Prince's company, the resources company that was headquartered in China and then moved to the UAE. That basically, he's a very, in some ways, a very, very great source to me, and he's been very helpful to me over the years in exposing Eric Prince. And I'm not criticizing him for that. What I'm just
What's his last name?
Smith. Greg Smith. You're going to find it hard to find some stuff in him because he's one of those shadow people, but he's out there, and I've certainly interviewed him. But my point is not to talk about Greg, because I think maybe he's well intentioned, maybe he isn't. My point is that this notion that I'm still, that I should be held responsible for this one interview, that's a negative on me for platforming this, is just bullshit. It's just bullshit.
Well, let me explain platforming real quick, and
Yeah.
I got your back, and I'll go after this, Cat. I got no problem. Platforming is only platforming when you give someone a massive platform on a major news outlet, or you give them a job.
Or
Okay,
you
let
give
me.
them a permission to be on Twitter or X or
Yeah, that Twitter platform. You
Yeah.
didn't. You
Yeah.
interviewed him.
Yeah.
And you interviewed him because you wanted to talk to this Charles gentleman about his turn from MAGA over to Team Biden.
Yeah.
Great, good, awesome. Doesn't matter why you wanted to fucking interview the guy. You want to interview him, you interview him. You want to talk to him, you talk to him. It's nothing about journalistic standards. You're interested. You want to have a conversation with him. And guys like this, I'm looking at a picture of Greg Smith in the Colorado Sun, wearing a cowboy hat, leaning over a railing like a tough guy. They're afraid of you, right? Guys like that. And so what they do is they gin up these ideas that, you platform somebody, and then they activate a whole network to start feeding this bullshit narrative about how you platformed a Nazi or platformed a racist or platformed a white supremacist or platformed a traitor. You're allowed to fucking talk to and with anybody you want, any fucking time you want, because you're not platforming, you're interviewing him. Platforming would be if you gave this Charles Johnson guy a fucking job or a show on your network.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm not doing that. And the thing is, I mean, I was a target of an operation which I was deeply distressed by. This was the start of a very awful thing when that was happened to me. I mean, I learned a lot from it, and I learned a lot about the organization by being a part of this influence or being targeted by this operation. But it blows my mind how people just latch onto these things that are just, Yeah, they spread like wildfire because they're intentionally spread like wildfire. These are vast networks of people that are designed to destroy people's reputations, that work in both the real world and online. It's not just an online thing. They'll come after your friends, they'll come after your business associates, come after your family. They just try wreck you as much as they can in order to keep your message quiet or stop you from being the journalist that you are. So, um, you know, I just think people need to be a little bit less naive about how these things spread, and to just grab whatever someone said about Zev or not does not necessarily make me one way or another. But I just want to get that off my chest.
Thank you. Ask Zev about Zev.
Yeah.
There's a novel idea.
Yeah.
Listen, this happened to me 2014. Yeah, 11 years ago, where I mocked a rapist who happened to be gay, and said, I hope he sentenced to 5 years in jail. Hope he experiences 5 of the greatest years of his life. But big fan of prison justice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This machinery went to work to paint me as someone who's always hated gay people.
Mm-hmm.
Always, you were in Toronto at the time.
Yeah.
You read the stories. You know my history.
Yeah.
And so prior to, and this was largely driven by online stuff. And at the end, when I actually got fired from the radio station I was at for 15 years, did a morning show, was #1 in Canada for years and years and years, which is why I'll never do radio again, by the way. And at the end of that, when I finally got gassed, someone sent me a DM and they said, "We got you." I'll never know who it was from.
Mm-hmm.
There are dark fucking shitty forces at play.
Exactly.
When it comes to people like Zev doing the job that he does, people like us doing the job that we do, because, and I'll tell you why, is because when you get really close to the truth, it's a fucking red alert for certain group of people. And we don't live in a time where you can, like I did, do a radio show, go in, spit fire for 4.5 hours, or like you, go in and produce a show or do an investigative report, put it out there, feel really good about it, maybe read a couple shitty comments in the comment section, or inform people. We live in a time where people have instant access to everybody, including you, and that includes raising an army of fucking morons or ginning up a troll or bot army of morons to hurt people like you. I know Zev. Zev is one of the best investigative reporters and one of the best television executives to ever come out of Canada. Ever, ever, ever. Okay? He is a gay Jewish man who does some of the best work, which doesn't matter, the best work in his field when it comes to uncovering things that people try to keep in the dark. And that, my friend, is the truth. That is why you got attacked. And I hope everybody shares this with people. And I hope you subscribe to narrative.org. And I hope you're writing a piece about this so that you can reclaim parts of your life back. Because I know your story. You should.
Yeah.
I know your story. And I there are parts of it that you won't even talk to me about because obviously so much emotion, anxiety, maybe some PTSD is attached to it because I've lived it. There was a time where I couldn't even walk out of my fucking house without thinking that everybody looked at me like I was homophobic. Like, I'm not even kidding you. So I know the damage that it's done and the motivation and the life that it steals. So good for you for wanting to talk.
And these are professional outfits, and for you and me who are like independent guys who are just, we just, go in and do our work every day. We just get up and do our work every day. We don't expect to have professional espionage type organizations target us. And you might, maybe it wasn't the case in your case, but it sounds like it could have been an organized hit on you, and as it was on me, this was an organized attempt, and it came right after I was exposing some of the Epstein stuff, the Epstein Israel stuff, that's right when it happened. And that stuff as well was called part of a catch and kill operation. So, this all gets into the weeds of things, and no one needs to get bogged down in it. But just be aware that not everything you're hearing out there is necessarily accurate or necessarily true about the person that they're talking about.
I would say 20% is true. I don't believe 80% of the shit that other people say about other people. I like to meet the person. I like to give an opportunity. And you're one of the greatest, my friend. And I'm really grateful and proud to be working with you always.
Thank you. I appreciate your support, and thank you for that. And thanks for letting me just say that, because I need to get off my chest.
No problem. I'll kneecap. I'll online kneecap Greg Smith too if you want. I'm happy
Well,
to
I'm
do
gonna.
that.
I'm gonna respond to him right now. I just wanted to share this with you guys first, and then I was gonna respond to him and just say, this is just not right. So I'll do that, and then I'll write.
You take the high road. I'll take the low road because it's way more fun.
All right, you do it. That is the 5-stack for today. Everyone should check out deanblundell.substack.com, and not just check it out, subscribe to it, become a paid subscriber to it. It is the best source of information you can get every morning in terms of what's happening in your world, and especially as he's covering the Canada-US relationship and what's going on in Alberta. No one is covering it like Dean Blundell is right now, and it's your story, and I hope people start following you and take it seriously from what you're reporting there. And at narrative.org, narrative.org, the next chapter of The Greatest Heist is coming out. Oh boy, this thing gets really interesting. This is not, who would have thought? I would, this is
Dude, I wait for your Greatest Heist series like I wait for a new episode of Wednesday.
It's good. It's kind of a similar territory.
Seriously, where you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see it. This is so cool. I don't know if I'm a teenager or if I just like gore, or if I'm into this new Addams Family stuff. But I got so excited for these episodes of Wednesday, or a new episode of Slow Horses. By the way, Slow Horses coming out again. I binge watched that stuff. I binged the Greatest Heist series. Everybody needs to go get it. If the new series is coming out, tell me when and how people can get it.
Well, we're on episode, what is it? Chapter 10 now. And it's, I didn't think the story would continue. I mean, I thought there was a sort of a natural ending to the story, but then when you getting a lot of new information from very, informed people and other people who've lived through this and other sources. This is an ongoing story, and it really is the 4 decades crime spree that these guys went on to destroy America, destroy capitalism, and the stuff that we're getting to next is all about the bailouts and how these bailouts that we've been so accustomed to save our economy time and time again have all been, another schemes to make people like Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein and company rich, and foreign countries rich, but have never come to the American people. The result has just been this ballooning debt that is causing such a crisis for us right now, and why we're in the position we're in. So, but I'm starting to unpack some of that. So the next chapter will be out Wednesday, I think. So that's coming out soon.
Awesome. All right. I look forward to it. Thanks, buddy.
That's the 5-stack. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Bye, guys.